person?
I am Anisur Rahman, professor in the Department of English at Jamia Millia Islamia. This is a central university in New Delhi, and I teach in the Department of English there. I'm in Purdue as a visiting scholar. Now, my meeting with Charles Ross is another good opportunity, another good occasion for me to be here, in the sense that we met in one of the meetings of the Department of English, and there he told me that he has one such program in which he has been recording people to read poetry and other works from various languages of the world. And it was on that occasion that he talked to me if I could read something from Urdu. And Urdu being my mother tongue, I said yes, that is something which I'd love doing. Mirza Ghalib is one of the most important poets, a canonical figure in the history of Urdu and Persian literature. And we all know that Mirza Ghalib was not known to the West. It was only in 1969, when his centenary year was being celebrated all over, people in the West came to know about Ghalib. Adrian Rich, the foremost American poet today, wrote many ghazals after Ghalib when she came to know of Ghalib in 1969, and when she translated many of Ghalib's ghazals, that is the time when she started writing her own ghazals. She wrote many of them feverishly, I should say, at that point. Anyway, what I was trying to say is this, that Ghalib is one poet whom one can think of. Generally, if you think of ghazal, if you think of Urdu, and if you think of the great literature of Urdu and Persian, name of Ghalib comes instantly to your mind. He died in 1869. That was turbulent time in the history of India, as we all know. The British and the last days of the Mughal Empire. And at that point of time he was writing, and he was writing in his diaries also about how, I would say that he was a great historicist that way, because in his prose writings as also in his poetry, he has actually recorded the history of his times. He was born in 1796, and you could say that he died at the age of 73. But he wrote in the two languages, Urdu and Persian. Persian, we all know, is a major classical language. Urdu is the language which is spoken in India and Pakistan, and is a language in which you have great literature available right at this point of time. Some very virile writers writing in India as also in Pakistan that you have. All of them look back to Ghalib for their creative sustenance and inspiration, so to say. Ghalib to me is an iconic figure in the sense that he was one who could write extremely difficult and pedantic verse. He was the one who could write extremely accessible kind of poetry, very conversational, very colloquial, but at the same time very philosophical. Ghalib is a major name in the history of Urdu poetry and the history of Persian poetry. It's very, one would be astonished to know that at the age of 19, 20, he had written almost all the important ghazals that we are aware of. So the way he matured was something phenomenal and something very special. In the very beginning of his career, Ghalib could write some of his best verses, and after that he switched over to Persian, and after Persian again he comes back to Urdu. He maintained his journal, and the Stambo is the book of prose in which he writes about his times and about the life. But the most interesting part of his prose is the letters that he wrote to his contemporaries. Those are wonderful letters, very conversational, very colloquial, as if he was talking to someone. That was something done for the first time in the Urdu literature. No one wrote letters like that, very informal ones, as if he was talking and the person addressed was sitting right there, and he was as if going to answer to the letters. So that was the kind of thing that he did. He's a major poet, no doubt, and he has made a great impact not only in Urdu. Even today people look back to him and they draw their sustenance from him, and all over in other languages. He has been translated in many languages of the world, in English also, and that's how Ghalib is well known all across. Well, I'm going to read you a ghazal by Ghalib, which I personally like a lot, and I have been quoting it again and again when I teach my students what actually a ghazal is. And it appeals to me because it's on the one hand communicates very clearly, very easily to anyone who listens or reads to these couplets, to this ghazal. And also it's philosophical at the same time. So it's simple and it's philosophical. It's very elusive kind of poetry. I'm going to read that. It says, Dil nada tujhe hua kya hai? Dil nada tujhe hua kya hai? Aakhir is dard ki dawa kya hai? The second couplet is, हम है मुश्ताक और वो बेजार, हम हैं मुश्ताक और वो बेजार, या इलाही ये माजरा क्या है। मैं भी मुँह में ज़बान रखता हूँ, मैं भी मुँह में ज़बान रखता हूँ, काश पूछो कि मुद्दा क्या है। जबकि तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, जबकि तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, फिर ये हंगामा ए खुदा क्या है। सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आए हैं, सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आए हैं, अब्र क्या चीज़ है, हवा क्या है। हमको उनसे वफ़ा की है उम्मीद, हमको उनसे वफ़ा की है उम्मीद, जो नहीं जानते वफ़ा क्या है। हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, और दरवेश की सदा क्या है। और जान तुम पर निसार करता हूँ, जान तुम पर निसार करता हूँ, मैं नहीं जानता दुआ क्या है, और मैंने माना कि कुछ नहीं गालिब. You will see here, this is the last couplet, and last couplet the poets use their name, and Ghalib was his title. No. So मैंने माना कि कुछ नहीं गालिब, मुफ्त हाथ आए तो बुरा क्या है. So in the last couplet he uses his name and says that, well, I know Ghalib is nothing, but what's wrong if he gets something for free? This is a ghazal which is very oft quoted. People read it a lot. Most of these couplets people remember by heart. These are very simple, easy to remember, but at the same time you will see there's a philosophical halo in each couplet that I have read. There's a deeper philosophical layer of meaning that you can discover if you read it a little more closely. And you would see that there is a qafiya and there is a radif. Qafiya and radif means it has to be in the same meter, it has to be in the form of the couplet, the last words have to rhyme together, and as for example you might have noticed, every verse ended on hua kya hai, ada kya hai, dawa kya hai. So kya hai, many of the words that we have in Urdu are drawn directly from Persian. Actually from two families, two languages you have words are coming in Urdu. One is from Arabic and the other is from Persian. Right. So you have in Urdu words drawn from Persian. That's why it is said that Urdu is a language which grew in this manner from a kind of admixture of cultures and peoples. It's very much like that. This is very much like an improvisation upon the Arabic alphabet, you could say, but this is very Persian script. This is clearly Persian script. The ghazal that I have read, you will notice that it ends always on kya hai, kya hai, kya hai, kya hai. And before that there is a word which rhymes well. For example, dawa kya hai, hua kya hai, ada kya hai. So dawa, ada, hua, liya, diya, kaha, suna. So it all is falling in the same kind of pattern. Rhythmically you would see. And kya hai, kya hai, kya hai. Now it's very difficult to write, to express an idea in two lines, and that must fall in the same meter, and also the constraint of the qafiya and the radif. Qafiya is dawa, ada, hua, diya, liya, kiya, etc. And kya hai, kya hai, kya hai, kya hai will always be there. So that is how a ghazal is written. Generally when you think of Urdu poetry and especially of Urdu ghazal, people think that it's something all about romance, love, which is not true. Even though the word ghazal means talking to the beloved, the literal meaning of ghazal is talking to the beloved. That also has probably contributed towards that stock impression that ghazal is talking to the beloved only, which is not correct. Ghazal is something more. It takes into account other experiences of life and some philosophical questions it broaches. It tries to answer some of the mysteries that we have all been, and then the writers and the poets and the philosophers have always been trying to answer. So it's not true to say that ghazal is associated or is concerned only with the emotional or the romantic or the questions of love. You have all kinds of experiences expressed in ghazal. For example, you have the day-to-day humdrum life being reflected so very well in the ghazal form. Especially the modern poets, I would say after 1930s and 40s, that is after the progressive writers movement in Urdu that started in 1930s, where you have poets talking of the ground realities. That is, I am reminded of Eliot, who said that the job of the poet is not only to look at the beautiful and to write of the rose and the Rolls Royce, but to look beneath and discover the horror and the boredom and the ugliness of life. That is what the progressive writers movement was trying to do. Look at the horror and the boredom and the ugliness of life. And in 30s, you look what was happening, the W.H. Auden kind of poetry that he was trying to write. Similar things were happening there also. And you have these poets who are trying to look at the stark realities of life. For example, the first couplet is Dil-e nada, tujhe hua kya hai? My simple heart, what has happened to you? Or what ails thee? Or what ails you? What has happened? Dil nada tujhe hua kya hai? My simple heart or naive heart, what has happened to you? What ails thee? The second line says, Aakhir is dard ki dawa kya hai? Tell me how to cure you. Tell me where lies the medicine for your cure. Tell me how to get you back to the normal state once more. So this is very simple. Dil nada tujhe hua kya hai? My simple heart, what ails you or what irks you, and what shall I do to get you back? Now, this simple, something very simple, but now look at it a little more deeply. And it is trying to address the heart itself directly, as if heart was some kind of, is going to address or is going to answer you. And there is a deeper layer of meaning just beyond that. Similarly, मैं भी मुँह में ज़बान रखता हूँ, काश पूछो कि मुद्दा क्या है. I too have a tongue in my mouth. Why don't you ask me what I want? जबकि तुझ बिन कोई नहीं मौजूद, फिर ये हंगामा है खुदा क्या है. I know there is just one God. Then why? What is this all hubbub about? And what's happening all around? We know there is just one, and He's there in the skies. So it's something so very simple that you are talking about. But then Ghalib gives it a form which is extremely interesting to look at, and you just go deeper into it and you discover newer vistas of meaning, and that is what makes Ghalib the poet that he is. Yes, that is it. It's not just simple expression, but there is something hidden behind it. It's very ironical, swift, very very subtly ironical, I would say. Yeah. For example, हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा. Be good to others, God will be kind to you. हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा. Or Darvesh ki sada kya hai? What else would the Darvesh? Darvesh is not just a beggar but a mendicant maybe. So what else does he tell you? He only says that be good to others, God will be to you. Now this is something which we say day in and day out. You be good to others, others will be good to you. Ghalib tells us, हाँ भला कर. हाँ is something you address someone in a very equal manner. हाँ, yes, come. So हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा. Be good and you will meet good treatment from others. Or Darvesh ki sadak, what else is the Darvesh going to tell you? And as if the speaker, the poet himself is a Darvesh. And Darvesh is one who is a fakir, who is a saint, who is a sadhu, who is having some kind of knowledge of the other world. And, so something, who knows much deeper. And who knows of something.
I think you really gave me a new sensibility here. That was really great. Thank you very much.
You'll have to edit it.
Yeah. Actually, we can. I'd throw that into as a possible ending point, but we could. That was pretty interesting. What else don't I know about this or about Indian literature? That I'll just run the tape. But,
I would say that it's very difficult to define Indian literature as such, in the sense that, as I was telling the other day in my talk, that India has so many languages. It's a multilingual, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious kind of society. Now, when we say Indian literature, it's a very difficult thing to really point out what do we mean actually by Indian literature, because it's written in many languages, and 800 languages, so to say, out of which you have some accepted by the government of India, recognized, and in the 8th schedule of the languages you will have that. The question is that we are coming to understand or develop the whole notion of Indian literature through translation these days. Because those living in the north of India would not know what's the literature of the south like, because there is a different family of languages.
Is this localized geographically?
It is localized geographically. For example, in south, if you go to the southern part of India, you have 4 languages that the people speak there. So that is one kind of linguistic cluster: Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam. But if you come to north, you have a different family and different cluster of languages. For example, you have Hindi, Urdu, Bangla, Marathi, Punjabi, etc. Now, how do you know about all these? You know through translation. So some of these literatures we have come to know about only through translation. So some of the major writers have been discovered in the recent past only because of the act of translation, which is a major preoccupation in India. That's why I often say that we are passing through a great phase of, say, a new kind of historiography or a new kind of literary culture that is emerging, in which translation is playing a very, very important role. It's a kind of connecting on a highway all the areas, and the linguistic areas, so to say. And I understand it's through English that many of our poets and many of the poets of various parts of the world have been known to each other. What are the common features which bring the literatures of the world together? It will be difficult to discover them, because in one particular nation you have a certain kind of literature being produced. Just as you mentioned, the layers of irony in what I was talking about a while ago. Now you might have a different layer of irony and wit in some other literatures, because that relates with the linguistic behavior and the norms of a society and the cultural variations that you have in a region or in a nation, so to say. So it's difficult giving a full-fledged or a foolproof or a definite kind of definition to what world literature really might mean. What are the common features which bring the literatures of the world together? It will be difficult to discover them because in one particular nation you have a certain kind of literature being produced. Just as you mentioned, the layers of irony in what I was talking about a while ago. Now you might have a different layer of irony and wit in some other literatures because that relates with the linguistic behavior and the norms of a society and the cultural variations that you have in a region or in a nation, so to say. So it's difficult giving a full-fledged or a foolproof or a definite kind of definition to what world literature really might mean. But we know what we mean when we use the word world literature. Literatures from various parts of the world available to the readers through translation so that they could compare and contrast one with the other and have a major understanding of the major voices of the world. One would not know Lorca, one would not know Baudelaire, would not know Tolstoy, and one would not know, for example, many of the writers whom we read today with great interest. The whole notion of world literature is very closely comparable to the notion of post-colonial literature. For example, post-colonial is a big umbrella. There are many post-colonial nations and we all give just one term to it, post-colonial. There are many post-colonialisms. So putting them under one umbrella for the sake of convenience is fine. But then there is a Indian post-colonialism and there is a Canadian kind of post-colonialism and Australian and New Zealand and so on and so forth.